Okay. That there's a little, yeah, that's good. 27. I want 27 on this. Go ahead. Come on. There we go. That's what we want. And I'll just do another demo. So that's good. Okay, come back to 27. Good. Come back to there. And let me just see how we're doing here. Okay. You can hear me, Yasmin? Thanks. It was about time I get the haircut. Good. Thanks. I've got a hat over it, but I wanted to talk to you about Repair Cafe to remind me. So, good eyes, Yasmin. You're awake. That's good to hear. Good to see. You got it. Good. Yasmin is definitely watching. She can hear. That's good. So let me just get finally connected and here, and I'll do it this way. That way I can see them. Yeah, so I can see Yasmin and Julie in there. I'm going to close that for now. Put that over here. Put this over here. Hello, Trevor. How are you? Good. Grab a seat. Yeah. Yeah, well. Is Ryan coming today? Do you know? Yeah? Okay. Okay, so I think we're good there. We have the map. We have Toria over there. YouTube is going. And oh, okay. Oh, I see. It's doing a transcriptive. That's what I was looking at. That was a little confusing for the moment, but that's working. We've got the live chat. We've got the map, and we have that, and we have video. So I will put into the link. So the final thing I'm going to do is put some videos into the links. First, there's the human population one coming from the human population. Okay, video number 1. Then there is Maite's clip from Amistad. And we'll do that. Amistad. Number 2. And then there's a student final assignment that was really good. History of the Free Thinker. And I want to show you. History of the Free Thinker coming. There we go. And I think, and then there's a web page from yesterday's, no, we don't want to do that. We'll do this. This is from yesterday's class from YouTube, and I'm going to put that GC November 20. Oh, that's Wednesday, 22nd, 2023 on artificial AI. I think, okay, great. So there's 4 things in there. I don't know if we'll be able to see them all, but, and then let me get rid of some things here. And then I think we're good. Of course, I haven't had a chance to really review anything, but that's all right. We'll have to do that. Good. I'm just clearing up the dock right now, cleaning that up so I don't get too confused. My notes, which I have barely had time to review, but we'll do that some other time. Get rid of that. The videos are in the tab, so we're good there. So we're looking pretty good. And I have my books here. So I'm going to shut the door. We know we have audio, and I know Yasmin can hear me clearly. And let me just double check to see if we can hear them. Okay, so Yasmin, could you just jump on your mic and say hello?
Hello.
Perfect. Okay, so we have a connection there. That's great. And let's see how this is working over here. Let me just straighten that out for everybody. And I'm going to lower the blind, and we're just about ready. I just want to straighten that out so you can see me clearly when I come over here. Yeah, there we go. So, and I should be, yeah, good. Okay. So I'll leave that there for now. The stylus is sitting there as it should. And let me just wait for that to come down. That way, yeah, you can see it nice and clearly there. And then I'll bring the camera back and I can see it there. Good. So things are working. And if I can hear Yasmin, I can hear Julian, and I can hear anybody else. So all the online students are ready. And so I'll just close this so we have good audio. And I'll just take one final little thing of water here. Oh, this is getting stuck again. Okay, that's because of that. But let me just, yeah, stay there. Okay, stay there. Okay, so I'll just take a quick final look at my books, Eyewitness to History, and I want to tee up what I was going to read there from Eyewitness to History before I get too confused. Here, 446, page 446. The first tanks ever in action, 1916. Nice. That's going to go for 20th century. I don't think I'll do Tsar Nicholas and the assassination of him. The first tanks. That's enough. And then Oppenheimer from American Prometheus, the actual book, needs to be explained. Yeah, that's great. That's great. So we've got those two teed up in the books, okay, from my library. And we have that ready. So I think when we come to, oh, I know what we're going to want. We're going to want this. So let's come to the 20th century, and we want this 20th century one. There we go, presenter view. Okay. I think we are ready. Right, and what do I want finally from here? I think I will go with extended. Yeah, because then I can see. Good, I can see that. I think we can start. We've got this jet ready, or this spacecraft. There's just so many things to click on, but it's completely my fault because I've created this, and sometimes I feel like I can't handle this because there's too many things to do, but I just have to work a little harder and make sure I get everything done, but it's done. So technically, we're good. Great. Okay, so welcome everyone to our Friday Short History of the World class, and everything stay here, please. Do not fall or disconnect or anything. I have my Repair Cafe hat on for now, just to remind all of you of something in a moment, inspired by Maite, always. Inspiración de Maite, que viene de México. I can show off a little bit of Spanish. I can't speak Spanish well, but it's, I can speak a little bit and understand it. So today, what we have to do is start the 20th century. And part one, the 20th century. And the video, it's coming. But first, I have to explain always, my lesson plan is always, I tell you what's going to happen, more or less, and then we start. Okay, so there's a method to the madness, in the sense that I always come in and there's a welcome. I have to make sure we connect. We do a little review. We kind of get going. And then in the review, we will look at the clip because we want to review a little bit about humanity's stain. And that was last week. There's a lot this semester that I haven't been able to give you content, but I'm trying to bring it in whenever I can by keeping the story going so that we can get to the critical part, which is now the 20th century. But there's still things that we need to bring in. For example, when we talked about humanity's stain last week, we touched on the transatlantic or triangular slave trade, but to really understand the depravity of it and the depth of it and the suffering and anguish that many humans felt, we didn't really touch on that. And I think Maite has been able to help us by recommending a clip from a movie that we're going to show shortly in the review section to help us understand a little bit more about that. But I do want to warn you, nonetheless, that in spite of the fact that we did abolish officially the institutional slave trade in the world, suffering and anguish and depravity still exist in the 20th and 21st centuries. In fact, in some ways, on even a greater scale. But we will explore that. It's often said whenever history repeats itself, the only thing that changes is that the price or the cost goes up. So that's by way of warning you with a bit of a trigger warning that in addition to the clip that I suspect is quite graphic and hard to watch from the movie that Maite has recommended, when we start getting going on the 20th century and we get into the Second World War, you are going to be hearing about and seeing some things that are pretty stark and maybe difficult for some of you to see or think about. And I'm not going to beat around the bush. I'm not going to try and sugarcoat anything. I'm going to try and tell you what we know and what happened to the best of my abilities and your abilities as you contribute. In spite of all that is really messed up about the human race, and in spite of what we haven't learned and how much suffering there continues to be, I remain, and I will try and present to you why, very hopeful about our ability as humans and creatively intelligent, critically thinking beings to solve our problems. So before we review and look at some things, I just want to remind you that one of the advantages of learning history as we have, exploring history this way this semester in terms of the human story on planet Earth, the larger story, is that you will have seen that we humans just arrived. In other words, if you get depressed, or you get dystopian, or you think darkly about our future, it may be because you don't have a wide enough, large enough view of our history. Once you start to pull back and understand history from this larger perspective, you can see things like, oh, we just became civilized 10,000 years ago. And, oh, we got through an ice age. And, oh, we got through 2 terrible world wars with tremendous suffering, but it also led to the Declaration of Human Rights for all of humanity from the United Nations that was formed after the Second World War. So you would be able to at least say, we humans are just infants here in this story. And as one student once said to me, I thought quite insightfully, there are a lot of growing pains that we're going through right now. That's not to sugarcoat anything, but I would never stand here in front of you and speak about the unspeakable, which is war, torture, torment, suffering, human ignorance, human depravity, human cruelty, and weapons of mass destruction without showing you that there's a way beyond this, that humans do solve their big problems, but it's slow and it's painful. And the suffering continues. But there's no way I would ever stand here in front of you and say that this is the future, because there are so many humans in our story who represent the better angels of our nature. And as William McNeill said in his classic Rise of the West, it's only in war or in great suffering where we see the best of humanity. Not the worst, but often the best. We see kindness, we see courage, we see people wanting to do the right thing in spite of everything that is harming them or their peoples. So it's slow. All right. So let me bring up things on the big board for you and make sure that we can get going. And first, I'm going to do this because I want to make sure we have good notes today. And then the second thing I want to do is I want to bring this over here, which is I want to bring it on the other side. It's a bit counterintuitive. And then finally, I have that, and then I want the main computer, which will get me, great. Okay, so that's the way things should look, and I can run this. I can move over to the smartboard and take some notes. And I see we have 4 people here, 1 back there, so it's a smaller group, which means it could be really good in terms of the conversation. Everybody can contribute today. We miss Ariana, wherever she is, but she's probably watching the recording, and Ryan and Azam. But we have today, is it Miguel? Oh, God. Remind me, it's not Juan, right? No, okay. It's 202. Just give me the first name again, and it will stick. Okay. It's
David.
David. Yeah. Lombardo Rodriguez. Lambana Rodriguez. Right. I got that. Okay. And then it's not Jessica. Huh? Chantel Gallant. Yeah, great. Okay. Maite, who needs no introduction, and Trevor's over there, and back there we have another student who may have something to say. We shall see, but he's always listening. So let me just get the microphones out here, okay? So, okay. That's true. But David is also a lot of people's names, not just the Jewish name. So I really should remember it. But I have many students, David, and that's true. I should remember.
Oh no, yeah, I struggle too. I'm just
David. Yeah, David would be.
yeah, but David.
That would be
Call me
Spanish.
David.
Yeah,
Don't,
David. Okay.
don't call me David.
No, don't you want to be? Yeah, she called David because that would be the Spanish one. David. It's David. Okay, David. Yeah. Okay. So David, Chantel, Maite, Trevor, and our great student back there as well. And also online we have on board Yasmin and Julian. Hi, Julian. Do you want to just say hello on your microphone or in the live chat?
Hello.
Great. Okay. So let me see where we're going to go next. Gentlemen, here comes Godavjit and Hamal, right? Hamal? Hamel. Okay, here they come. Lovely. Come sit down, and we have the Eastern world now represented. So we have the East, we have the South here, South America, not Central, okay? South America or North America. And then we have Canada and North America and we have also the Great Repair Cafe represented up here, and we'll talk about that a little later, but we need to jump into things. And so first, I would like to do a little review. And in the review, I'd like to start with a clip from Maite. Okay, so in the live chat, you will see Amistad. It should L'Amistad. Okay, L'Amistad. And I'll just take a look here. It's right there. It should be, yeah, you'll see it there. So it's 8 minutes that you've given. We don't have 8 minutes. We don't, well, okay, we'll start it, okay, and then we'll see, okay? We may not be able to watch it for 8 minutes, but I'm going to give the microphone to Maite, and actually, so they can see you. Do you want to come sit here, and you can set it up, okay? So you can sit. Maite is going to explain why she has sent this clip for us, and I'm going to bring it over here momentarily. Here we go, and the clip is right here. Okay, and I will.
Okay.
I will start it shortly. So we're ready for everybody. The ones who are live right now, Victor, Julian, and Yasmin, they can watch it on their own. But wait for Maite
Shouldn't
to.
you put it in the middle?
I can do that.
Please?
Sure. Okay, hold on. Let me do that. So it would be
Can I
main
give an
over
example?
here, and let me just do over there. Okay. So
May I give an
yeah,
introduction?
absolutely. So Maite is going to set it up for you, and then you tell me when you're ready to run it. Okay.
Okay, the video is called La Amistad. La Amistad was a ship, a slave ship. Last class, we kind of see a little bit about the slavery times where Europeans went down to Africa and then they kidnap and capture Africans. And the thing I want to
Slave
say,
traders
slave traders,
and the
bec-
tribal chiefs. who gave-
okay. One thing, in Africa, there has always been this situation of slavery and warriors among tribes
Yep.
or between tribes, how do you say it? And then this was a usual and common way of living, okay? It was until the Europeans survived to the African coast that it began as a business.
A big business.
Okay.
You saw this
Now-
last week. Okay. Yeah. Good.
But were British from Holland, Spaniards, and Portuguese who did this business.
Western Europeans on the west side of Europe.
Okay.
We call that the West.
So they
You're on the Atlantic.
trade, they used to buy the people and they went to the Bahamas. In there, they trade again, and then they were into many places in the American continent, because we don't say America as a country, American continent. It went to the 13 colonies of British
Became the United
the-
States.
that became in the United States a lot of time later, and to Mexico, and Central America, and South America. Okay?
Brazil, especially.
Yes, yes.
Brazil.
Okay, so we're about to see the conditions these people had to endure from the moment they were trapped to the moment they were sold. Okay, very harsh conditions. It's very violent. Okay,
Okay.
but
Okay.
that is history. History is violent.
I'm just going to add briefly. That's excellent, Maite. I tend to view anything that Hollywood or any filmmaker puts out about history generally as not as bad as reality. So I know it's going to be graphic. In real life, it was probably much worse. That's a hard thing to grasp, but anyways. So trigger warning, anybody? Okay, here we go. always. The business, the big business. Okay, I'm gonna stop this, and I just want to make sure that we have everything teed up here. So hold on a second. Because I want to come back. Whoops, we don't want that. Sorry. Okay. All right, let me just get this properly teed up, and then we're good. Then we're going to talk about that. Okay. This is the review. And let's stop for a moment before we really embark on the big topic today as we enter the 20th century. And let's see if Maite has anything she'd like to add to this. And then I'd like us to address a question before we begin the 20th century, which is, in what you just witnessed, which is pretty realistic, I would say again that it was probably much more painful, stark, and terrifying to be among those who were cast into the sea, or the mother and her daughter who made the decision to essentially die, to kill themselves. There were something like, it's been estimated that 20 to 25%, somewhere in there, maybe higher, of those who were taken from the African slave coast did take their own lives on board. So the suicides were not uncommon. It's actually similar, by the way, to the Taino Indians in the Bahamas area, who, when they encountered the Europeans during the conquest for the first time, when Columbus landed at that point in 1492, and he encountered native population there, he asked the Taino Indians to bring him the gold and silver that he was expecting. They didn't. And eventually, when it became clear to them that Columbus and others had no intention of getting to understand who they just met, but their intention was simply resources, and that they didn't have the weapons to defend themselves, they committed mass suicide too, rather than face the butchery and murderous campaign of the Europeans to extinguish the indigenous population in the Americas, who did not give them the resources that they wanted. Maite?
Okay, situation, desperate situations like that, when people kill themselves before suffering, has been Masada, for example.
Absolutely. Against the Romans, Jews did that, held out, and that's
Yes.
right. That's
And in many places of the world, before you get captured or you get slave or you get killed, you kill yourself. Okay, this is not um, just one
No.
time.
But rather than
But-
face the indignity
Okay.
of being killed by your adversary, you will maintain your dignity and integrity by taking your own life and staying pure.
What I
True.
want to say about the video is that it was a system. This was an economical system based in slavery. Okay, that became people became very wealthy, and two things. It didn't end up because of people were good out of the kindness of their heart because they were very concerned about the slaves' conditions and that they are human beings. Of course, there has always been abolitionists, but in Britain, even though there were many people saying that that was incorrect, that that wasn't Christian, that all kind of signatures, they made pledges to signature, and it was a matter of taxes that stop the ships to continue doing the slave trade.
However, okay.
Wait.
yeah, okay.
That was taxes, not human kindness. That was taxes. And that also happened again in the 13 colonies that became
The United States. Yeah,
Okay. But it was because the North want to change to a industrialized economic policy, and the South, they didn't want to. It wasn't not because poor black people, poor slaves, they were mistreated, they are human. No. It was because of economics, because what moves the war is money. It's not that.
Okay, let me stop because Maite is absolutely right. She's presenting a position that always needs to be considered, and it's a serious one, which is that nothing really changes unless people benefit economically, unless it's in their self-interest to do so. But I want to always make sure you understand, particularly as we go forwards now, that when things do change for the better, we are talking about something that Alfred North Whitehead helped us to understand about this idea of flashes of freedom. The idea that Abraham also represented, that even Akhenaten, the Egyptian pharaoh, represented, that the religious prophets, others, Jesus, Muhammad, Hindu prophets, Buddhist prophets, Prince Siddhartha Gautama, who led us to the idea of Buddhism. There are many, many individuals, many humans in our story who are not interested in money and who actually believe that what we want to be, what we humans want to be, is more free, is more respected, is to have dignity for us all. And so the idea of human rights that we have today is not just an economic one. There's something else here in all of us that's very important. And I want to show you this as we move into the 20th century, where in fact the suffering becomes even worse because our weapons get more powerful. Okay, I'm going to show you that in a moment. Weapons of mass destruction. But so I'm just trying to balance this a little bit because Maite's not wrong. However, it's more complex. There are other motives here that lead us to improve ourselves and to make us better. That's all, okay? And so Ryan, and then we're going to move on into the 20th century, and David as well. Do you want to say first? Go David, and then Ryan afterwards. Go ahead.
Okay, so I just want to share like the abolition in Colombia. I remember that because I took the first semester of political science there.
Yes.
So abolition in Colombia was basically because this guy from Haiti, the
Toussaint Louverture?
Toussaint,
Yeah,
right?
I told you about Toussaint Louverture in Colombia. Great.
They had
I'm gonna write this down. Go ahead, David.
they had a deal with Simon Bolivar.
Yes, Venezuela.
So basically, in exchange of like support for the for the independence of the great Colombia, they would like carry out the abolition of slavery in the Americas. It didn't work out as Toussaint thought it would be because it took a lot of years and it wasn't like an instant process. Like slaves were not free
Mhm.
after the process started, but rather like more people were not like enslaved. It was a process that took decades.
It's slow.
And the
Absolutely.
government
Yes.
started buying the slaves actually from their owners. And actually the owners would take the slaves out of Colombia, for instance, or today's Venezuela, today's Peru. They would take their slaves to other countries where they could sell them because the government would pay like a lesser amount,
Yes.
not even in silver or gold, but they would pay with some sort of bonus.
Right.
So it was a process more well, at least in Colombia, it was a process more due to influence of other countries, like represented by Toussaint.
But
And
when
it
we talk
was like
about,
it was a political influence. Let's call it.
remember the figure of Toussaint Louverture in Haiti in 1801, who led the revolution, defeated Napoleon's forces, pushed them back to France, and freed the slaves of Haiti. It became the first state in the Americas that was free of slavery. Sort of. Sort of. But let me just remind you again that today we use the word revolution for everything. You know, we have a revolution in digital technology, a revolution in education, a revolution in, science and technology. No, it's evolution. Things actually change more slowly than you think. When we talk about revolutions, that's a lot of hype. But things do change, and they are incremental. And Alfred North Whitehead helped us to understand that. He said that if you look back in history, you will see there have been incremental changes towards more freedom for human beings, but it has been what he calls a slow sunrise. It's a lovely expression. It's a very slow sunrise, but the sun is rising. Even Martin Luther King Jr. said, plagiarizing others, he did in fact plagiarize to some extent. He said that the arc of history, the long arc of history, is bending towards justice. But it's slow. And so I just want you to remember that as we move forwards, that it's slow, but it's real. And we are the beneficiaries of this movement towards greater freedom. Look at how we can sit here and talk. Look at the different cultures that are traveling, that are here. So it's real, okay? But I need to move on because I've got to get some critical points about 20th century. And Ryan's, okay, David, and then we'll go to Ryan, and then, yeah, sure. Well, okay. Okay. Toussaint Louverture. Yeah, the Haitian general. Yes. What would you say? Choose the word. Okay, sponsored. Whoops. Look at this. The antenna on this can write. Look at how sensitive this board is. Just a second. Okay, I'm going to write this down. Thank you. And what I like, David, is that you're also interacting with what's being written. Sponsored. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. And let me make sure I've got this sponsored. Okay. For now. And I'm going to put this here. Too many things in my hand. Okay. Here's what I need to say about where we are in history. We are now at, for want of a better number, we're at 1900. Ryan, go ahead.
I just wanted to ask you a bit about if you would elaborate a bit more on like Prince Pharaoh Akhenaten. I don't know how to pronounce his name.
Akhenaten.
Akhenaten.
Yes, he was the.
I heard a bit of information about him, like in terms of like spirituality and stuff. Like he was one of the first to use this actually sacred plant in Egypt, which they refer to as the blue lotus, and have all these out of body experiences where he actually explored what they believe was the afterlife and stuff like this.
I'm glad you asked. And again, these questions are great because it allows me to fill in some of the gaps that I haven't addressed through the talks because I've cut them short. Akhenaten was the Egyptian pharaoh. I know, but I want to answer his question. Oh, well, wait a minute. Hold on a second. Let me answer his question. And it also relates. Alfred North Whitehead, in his classic Adventures of Ideas, actually said that after Abraham and Moses, the Egyptian pharaoh Akhenaten represents one of our first free thinkers. He was the only pharaoh of 4,000 years of Egyptian civilization, highly conservative society. One pharaoh after another passed on in the family, but only one pharaoh ever broke that paradigm, and that was Akhenaten. And he said that we should be worshiping the sun, not other pharaohs, not ourselves, that there's something bigger happening. And this was all part of, Ryan, a gradual movement towards this idea of monotheism that emerged, which is there's something bigger happening in the human story than humans. It's this God. But once he died, and there were other pharaohs, including Tutankhamun, who came afterwards, they simply restored the old way. He was a rebel in the sense, but he was still a pharaoh. He was still in power, but he introduced this new idea of worshiping the sun, not the pharaoh. And once you introduce these new ideas, it's Alfred North Whitehead's contention and other historians in world history that you can't cancel an idea. Once an idea is out there and we're writing it down or we're communicating it, you can't take it back. Eventually that idea is going to spread if it's a good idea. And even Whitehead said again, the world dreams of things to come and then in due season arouses itself to their realization. The world dreams of things to come. So we're dreaming early on in some form with different brave free thinkers, but eventually we're going to start to realize that there's something better for humanity, and that is human rights. But it took a while, okay? So Akhenaten is important in introducing us to that, all right? Anything else you need to answer that? Yeah, I'll write it down, okay? Akhenaten, for sure. Yeah. The pharaoh, he'd be great to do your even final assignment on. So I'll just keep it like this. Akhenaten. It's sometimes spelled with an E, Ryan, or an O, okay? Great. Well, it's an important question because I do want to stand back when I can and tell you there is a story. There is a narrative, somewhat, that's emerging in the human story that we're learning from contemporary historians and others who are studying societies, and that is that there has been a slow, painful progression for humanity towards greater freedom. And in this freedom, there are benefits to us all, but then there's this thing called the anxiety of freedom. When we're more free, we have more decisions to make. When we have a stronger God-king figure ruling for us, a monarch, an emperor, a king, or anybody, a big mummy or a big daddy making decisions for us, we're children, but we're safe. H.G. Wells, another world historian of the 20th century, I hate to quote him because he was a ferocious anti-Semite. But he was important in his thinking, and so I say this with some caution. He was a terrible, vicious anti-Semite, but he said that when you look at human history, there's a period of adolescence, and there's a period of maturation, and our adolescence, in some ways, was that period of the golden age of Greece. That's when we were starting to grow up. It's very narrow-minded in the sense that it doesn't take into account the Indian worldview or indigenous worldviews. It's very Eurocentric. It's on Greece and Roman history. But his view was that children, when they grow up, they have to make decisions for themselves. They can't be placated. They're not given the pacifier anymore. The pacifier is mommy or daddy saying, you know, I'll feed you, I'll help you, I'll help make decisions for you. But once you're grown up, you have to decide for yourself and bear the consequences. That's what democracy is supposed to be. It's very messy. It's not perfect. But it's supposed to respect all of our independence and our desire to be in control of our destiny, and then we will choose together who we want to represent us. And in the best democracy, those that are elected by us are supposed to serve us. The problem is we've now got a system in a lot of democracies where we're supposed to serve them. So we have to get that back. You know, we have to get back that pure idea of democracy, which is anybody who's elected to represent us is serving us. And they have to remember that. They have to remember that. But anyways, there's just so much cynicism today about democracy everywhere in the world. And I will say one thing to keep you thinking. We are heading into, in the next 12 months, a very important time for the human story. There will be 40 national elections around the world. 40. There have never been, in recent memory, so many elections. Already, we're starting to see in Argentina, who did Argentina just elect? Who did Amsterdam just elect? We got to be careful that a lot of this fatigue, like we're exhausted and we're frustrated, we don't think our democracies are working well. We have to be careful that it doesn't lead to what Argentina just did, what Amsterdam just did. They elected a Trump figure. These are people who tell us simple demagogic things, which is, you know, get out, the immigrants got to stay out. You know, the world has to be white. The world has to be white. We've got to build up our armed forces. You know, there's a lot of cynicism. And I would just like to say, Ryan, that we're heading into a difficult period where we have to make sure we keep our freedoms. That's all, okay? Maite, I need to move, okay? Thanks. But in 1900, we often say it was a significant turning point, the start of the 20th century, because the population of the world had increased in 100 years. From 1800, there was about 1 billion people on planet Earth. By 1900, there were something like 4 billion. And then we are going to start to see through the 20th century, it's going to increase from 4 billion to now almost 9 billion. It's not just population that's going to increase tremendously in the 20th century. It's also the consequences of more freedom that humans were starting to win for themselves, the machines that they were starting to create that led to the Industrial Revolution. This is going to begin a kind of an explosion almost in development and growth in our story. The 20th century is considered the most accelerated period of economic, technological, social growth for humanity in all of human history. I want to remind you of a figure who was warning us about what was starting to happen with this growth. We don't yet have an environmental movement that we're about to get. We don't yet have the weapons of mass destruction that are about to come in the First World War. And I'm going to read you an account, an eyewitness account of the first tank that was employed in any warfare in the First World War. Leo Tolstoy, a great Russian novelist, the author of War and Peace, a classic in world literature, Anna Karenina. At the end of the 19th century, that's a real picture of him, almost 1,000 pages. I sometimes bring it in and I read. I've only read about 600 pages of it, but it's still a tremendous book. He was an intellectual rebel. And his novels of the 19th century in Russia became hugely read and admired and successful, like Dostoevsky, for example, one of his contemporaries. But at the end of his life, Leo Tolstoy made a fascinating decision that I think speaks to what's about to come in the 20th century. He said, like others had at that time, other philosophers and writers, that the world is starting to break down. We are exploiting too much from nature, and we want too much. It's a kind of Buddhist way of thinking, which is we need to curb our appetites. He, in his 80s, decided, in all his success, he walked away from his farm, sort of acres where he lived with his family and his wife and his children, and he essentially gave up his wealth. And he also opposed the Russian Tsar at the time by talking about how important, in some ways, Islam was, or other religions were, but he became quite spiritual. And he left his life behind, and he wanted to live in a much more simple, pure way with very little possessions. He eventually came to a train station. This is true. A movie has been made about this, but it's a well-known story. And it's unclear exactly what he was planning to do at the train station and where he was planning to go, but he died there. And he was found there. And his story represents a kind of cautionary warning to all of us. And that is, if we start to take on more and more growth, if we start to become more free, beware of where this may lead us, because we may start to take so much for our own appetites that we may start to destroy the planet and destroy ourselves. He was saying, be careful, humanity, of your appetites. And he didn't mean the corrupt monarchs and the corrupt god kings. He meant each and every one of us. When we become more free, we want more. We want a lot more. And so the responsibility does not lie strictly with our leaders. It lies with each and every one of us in terms of how we're going to create a world that is just, that is in concert with the environment, so it doesn't destroy the natural world, that will allow each and every human to fulfill his or her potential. We have to make sure we do that within our limits, because otherwise we may make irreplaceable damage to the planet. He understood something about the power of science and technology. And when humans become more free, they not only want to have more, they want to know more. We are incredibly curious, inquisitive creatures who are always exploring deep down. We want answers to what's happening around us. Science is that quest to understand what is happening in the real world. What is it that is leading the moon to be like it is and the stars to shine like they are, or even the day to turn into night? It's not enough for us to just pray to gods or God anymore. We want real scientific, common sense answers that allow us to predict what's going to happen in nature. That's called the scientific method. And we want formulas to do that. Today we have algorithms, but in the past we had equations, mathematical equations to help us predict what's going to happen in nature. As a result, we have seen, starting in the 20th century, we start to see this tremendous amount of scientific activity around archaeology and anthropology, digging things out of the planet, beginning to see what our real story is in the planet. It's often called, the 20th century, the Promethean age. And I want to explain something about the myth of Prometheus, because it's really important. The Greeks kind of saw this coming, but we are living it right now. Let's hear what you know about Prometheus, because it's been said by, grab a microphone, Ryan. Yeah, okay. This is an image of Prometheus, the Greek demigod, sort of half human, half god. And tell us about Prometheus, Ryan, go ahead.
I'm not sure if he was a man or a god. I think he was a man, but in Greek mythology, I think he was the person who stole the fire from the gods. Um, I I don't really understand the whole story of that, but I'm guessing that part of that has to do with just I don't know. I guess attaining a level of free will and freedom to become liberated from I guess the forces of nature in a sense.
You're on it. You're absolutely on it. Okay, let me explain so I can move quickly.
I
But
just want to toss in one
go,
small.
go on, and then and then we'll come to Maite, okay, and others. But no, but let Ryan and I want to make sure he has a chance, and anybody else. You're absolutely on it, and keep going because it's a very important point.
This was I was just going to say something on something else you said that I like the idea that you said that human beings are very inquisitive creatures, and it does appear that there is a very fine line between being inquisitive and wanting to know stuff and succumbing to the greed that comes along with that. So I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm about to show you some of the important turning points of the 20th century. Hopefully, I will get to the Second World War today, but we'll see. But this is just part one. And also, in terms of the format of teaching you this semester, I would rather have our interaction going, and I'll fill in what I can as we go. But I always like to defer to the conversation because I think that all of you have excellent points, but I want to make sure I include all of you. Okay? So is there anything you want to add, Trevor, to this, or Hamel, or Gurajit, Chantel, David, before I go to Maite? Let's stick, and we'll stick, you've got the microphone, right? Great. So you hold on. Is this about Prometheus?
Yes,
Great. Okay,
Prometheus.
go ahead.
Just
Tell us about
fast, the story. Prometheus was a demigod,
Yeah.
and he saw how humankind was struggling with, I don't know, evil forces, okay, the
Yes.
darkness. And so he gave the fire to humankind. So the other gods were pretty mad.
Especially Zeus,
Especially
the
Zeus.
principal deity or god in the
Yes,
Greek
the
pantheon.
father of all the
Zeus,
gods.
Father of all the gods. That's right.
And what he did to punish him was to lock him with chains in a
He was
mountain.
punished. He was punished. Prometheus in the myth was punished.
And every day, a crow, it was a crow?
I think it's a raven,
A raven came to eat his liver during the day. And every night the
Right.
liver
heals, closes
healed,
again.
and that was for the end of time.
Time.
If that's an
Exactly,
allegory,
Exactly.
I think that's an allegory that when you have a certain amount of knowledge or you are aware things, pain comes along with that because you know. And once you know, there's no way you can close your eyes. And you're going to be in
Knowledge-
pain.
Knowledge
Right.
gives us power, but also knowledge might give us too
Responsibility.
much. It gives us responsibility too. Exactly. They understood. So this is why historians and others say that the 20th century and the time we're living in now increasingly is what we call the Promethean age. And we need to understand that, okay? Go
To
ahead.
piggyback on something Mike Tay was saying, but it's interesting how like that they came to eat his liver because in Hindu philosophy, especially when it comes to the centers of the body, the liver, which is supposed to detoxify the system and filter out all the impurities, is heavily associated with the element of fire in the body.
Oh,
So
interesting.
that's interesting that
Yeah.
they came to eat his liver specifically. So
Well, we should ask our Indian classmates here, Gurujit or Hamo, is there anything in the idea of Prometheus, which is a Greek myth, that's a Western myth, that you are from the Eastern world? Is there anything in the Eastern mythology that speaks to this idea that humans have to be careful if they take too much knowledge that is the sort of territory of the gods? Because if they take from the gods are going to punish them for having too much knowledge. Is there anything that you know of? No?
is it? I was gonna ask you guys, is there anything like that maybe like relates to like that center in the body, like I think they refer to it as Manipura.
Want to check? Go ahead, Hamo or Gurujit.
No, I don't think that there is a methodology like that. If we gain a more knowledge, God will punish us. Because I thought that India is in the past, India is the center of the world where the people from the different part of the world come India to gain knowledge. And when British want to invade India, control over the India, they
Yes.
said that we need to destroy the education system of the India. If we don't destroy the education system of India, we can't rule over the India. They destroy so many libraries in India. Which
They did, huh?
yeah.
Yeah. We've heard that story before, right? In other cultures, it's a very common. Okay, let's just move on. The idea is that we are entering a period where some believe that humans are acquiring the powers of God, that they will start to know too much. Well, what do we mean by know too much? Well, let's first understand something about the beginning of the 20th century. Albert Einstein, among many scientists and physicists who were living during that time, were beginning to do a lot of research. There were new tools, microscopes. Soon there will be an electron microscope as well. But there was a lot of new thinking happening around this time. And Albert Einstein actually was doing some of his most important thinking at the beginning of the 20th century. He, in fact, wrote 4 of his most important papers in a period of a year when he was in his early 20s, and it happened around this time. What do I mean about Albert Einstein or about the scientists? Well, first of all, in 1901, the scientist who won a Nobel Prize for his discovery of the electron, the British physicist. And what did he see? Well, we might say, Ryan, he saw the fire. Let's understand something for a second. We knew up until this point in history that matter, whether it's a table, whether it's the beard on David's face, whether it's the plastic here, every object, everything, whether it's liquid or a hard object, it is made of atoms. And inside these atoms, we had begun to see there are subatomic particles that make up the atom. In other words, we humans were beginning to see what we are made of. In 1901, what we saw was the most powerful subatomic particle. In fact, we didn't see it. We've never really seen it because it's so fast. It's called the electron. We saw the tail of it. And what we began to understand is that in the atoms that compose all of what we have, our bones, our blood, everything that we are, there is, of course, protons and neutrons. They're together in the nucleus of the atoms. But then we saw this thing that's buzzing around. It goes so fast, nobody had ever really seen it, but we thought it was there. That's the electron. Once we saw that and we proved it, that's science. Science is when we see something in nature that we've never really seen before with our own eyes, with our own telescope, with our own microscope. We see something. Now, what are we going to do with it? This is technology. At the core of a lot of our developments in the 20th century is this idea of learning about the atom, learning about what the atom is made of and the parts of the atom. This is going to lead to a terrible, terrible question that Robert Oppenheimer is going to have to make in the Second World War. This is the book on which the movie is based. Pulitzer Prize, Oppenheimer. I'm going to read you something from this shortly that is really incredible. Just to remind you about the movie, Robert Oppenheimer, the physicist who was responsible for the Manhattan Project, United States, that developed the first atomic weapon that then was used to end, not hydrogen. That was later. No, atomic. Hydrogen is something else. Hydrogen's more powerful, absolutely. Hydrogen is what we definitely don't want. It's even more. No, Oppenheimer had a physicist working with him named, I think it was Edward Teller, who wanted to develop the hydrogen bomb during this project. And Oppenheimer said, you could try developing that, but we need to work on the bomb that we're working on now, which was a bomb built on nuclear fission, pulling the atom apart. In any case, the figure of the scientist, the free-thinking scientist in the 20th century, and then the business people, the capitalist, the American business people who come and begin to develop tools around these scientific discoveries are going to make a great impact on our world. But this is going to present us with a dilemma, too, in terms of our increasing power. What we're about to see through science and technology, not religion now. Religion has moved to the side. Science and tech are racing ahead now. And in your life right now, they still are. And they're even getting faster and faster. That's our world that we're in right now. And it's a very complex one. There were figures, Albert Einstein, Nikola Tesla. You've probably heard of his name, for example. European, brilliant free thinker, scientist who understood something about electricity and wireless transmission of information. He also understood a lot about hydroelectric power and how to take power from the Niagara Falls, for example, and then convert that into electricity. If you go to Niagara Falls today, I was just there yesterday, actually, because I had to visit the home where my mother was to help her move to a new place. You will see a statue of Nikola Tesla at Niagara Falls. The next time you go there, make sure that next to the marketplace at Niagara Falls, that big area for eating and tourists, just go a little bit westwards towards the city of Niagara Falls and just look up towards the casino, and you will see on the grass there a statue of Nikola Tesla. What we're seeing is this idea of humans looking into the natural world and understanding that there are all these sort of powers in there that we hadn't seen before, but we want them, and we want to do something with them. We want to create something with them. And we're about to see again, at the same time as this story is unfolding through the 20th century, we're seeing emerge, not quite at the same time, but a little bit later in the 20th century, the emergence of the environmentalist. For example, the person that I think kind of will help Maite see more positively the human story is a person named Rachel Carson. Rachel Carson in the 1960s wrote a book called Silent Spring that became the kind of first important text of the environmental movement. She was a free-thinking journalist, kind of amateur researcher. On her own, she began to study the effects of our chemicals that we had created with science and technology, the effect of plastics, for example, the effect of the waste that we were burying in underground that was starting to leak, some of the chemical waste that was starting to leak into the Niagara River that led to crises in the world around chemicals causing new diseases. She was alerting us to the idea to be careful. Humans may be creating a silent spring, which is there are no birds anymore. There's no growth anymore because we humans begin to, through our constant growth, we begin to destroy nature, or at least we impair nature. We do something to nature because we're taking new things out of the ground, or we're creating new waste into the atmosphere, or burying it, and we don't even know what the consequences are yet. Well, I do, she says. I've done my research, and we better be careful because there are consequences. It comes back to this idea that we were starting to create these new things. And there probably is no greater figure who represents the technological growth of the 20th century than Thomas Edison. Who was Thomas Edison? He was Thomas Edison not only invented, light bulb, the celluloid for motion pictures. He invented the turntable, the vinyl for records. He had something like more than 1,000 patents to his name. But what you're looking at is even more significant. It's Thomas Edison's real industrial laboratory in Menlo Park in New Jersey. In the early 1900s, he created a laboratory to just invent things. And he brought together a team. And in a way, this is like the first, Elon Musk room where, the young tech developers are sleeping in their sleeping bags, building algorithms day and night. They're so, committed to creating something new with technology that they'll just stay there and all day and all night until they have that algorithm just right. Well, what Thomas Edison was doing is he was telling his people who were working for him, stay there, work on this, work on that, and eventually we're going to come up with something new. We can do it. Light bulb, motion pictures, involved in radio development, so many patents of products that would become part of our world, the new world, came out of this industrial laboratory. Nikola Tesla actually came to him with some of his ideas, and we saw in the story of Thomas Edison and Nikola Tesla something that is going to repeat itself later in the 20th century, which is the very free-thinking scientist who doesn't really want to make lots of money. He just wants to get new ideas out there. That was Nikola Tesla. He takes his ideas to a person who is a hard-headed American capitalist, a businessman who only wants to make money, and he wants to figure out how he can take that idea and make a lot of money, and maybe he will steal that idea if he can from that person who has brought him in the idea. And Nikola Tesla and Thomas Edison had this very difficult relationship in which we can say that Nikola Tesla was exploited because he wasn't prepared. Yeah, but we've seen this, you know, in the 20th century, this idea that comes from this new idea as well for humanity, which is called capitalism. It's an ideology, and it's a modern idea, and it's based on that everybody should be left alone to make as much money as they want. All that matters is to ensure that you have that freedom, and the market will take care of itself with what's called a hidden hand. It's a idea that we are now beginning to see is not so helpful for humanity because there are many repercussions. I have a few minutes to stop here, and then we'll have a little discussion, and I'll continue next week because I want to introduce you to something that now presents the darker challenge for humanity. It has been said that in some ways, we humans, as we enter the 20th century, are still adolescents in that we have not solved some of our moral problems that have led to conflicts between societies. We still believe that our race, our culture, is somehow better than another, even though we've had this thing called democracy spreading and human rights spreading. In other words, we are morally undeveloped, but technologically super developed. This is a conflict because in 1914, the world entered into the first global war, the first global conflict. I'm not going to focus on the politics of it right now. Okay, great. I want to stop and explain. Thanks. Yasmin, yeah, let's stop for a moment. Would you say, excellent, David. Yasmin, I'm just going to read out loud what you've written here so we can all address it, and I'll try to fold it into my conclusion here. Would you say the progression of our technology has created a negative impact opposed to a positive one, despite us being able to communicate, share knowledge and ideas, etc.? I don't know how to answer that right now because it would take some explaining, but Yasmin, I would simply pose the dilemma, which I'm doing right now, which is we don't know yet whether our technology in the long run is helping us.
Sorry, can I say something?
Yeah, go ahead. But it's great that you're picking out that idea because this is the Promethean dilemma, which is we start taking knowledge, start creating more from it, but the punishment may be increasing against us because we're not knowledgeable enough to handle that new power, that technology. Go ahead.
I think for me, and right now, my opinion would be it's an extremely negative impact because of how greatly influential all of the technology, so movies, music, TV, social media, it's had such a negative impact on our mental health, crime, because it influences especially young kids who are like sponges who are being exposed because of school. They need laptops now, they need iPads, phones, whatever. They are being further exposed to things that should be concealed, if that makes sense.
No, it's very, keep going, Yasmin, because this is the central dilemma that we're going to be facing through the 20th century, is that our power is going to keep growing with new tools of mass destruction. But then the question is, do we know how to use them? And the only answer I can give you, Yasmin, is we can't go back now. We can't turn all of this back. We can only go forward. So do you want to add any more thoughts to that before we sort of conclude today? Because it's an excellent observation you've made.
Yeah, so especially with the advancements of electrical vehicles, what are they doing with those batteries? And from what my understanding is, even in the past with nuclear waste, it's either sent to places that are very small, like population wise, or a lot of our garbage waste is all sent to, say, places like India or Africa and dug into the soil. But in fact, it's impacting their environment and also directly impacting their health. But on the flip side, they have such like they're extremely rich in minerals and resources, but they're almost the most impoverished places.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Yeah. Even though we're able to know this information, nothing's stopping it because, again, how you said, when it comes to economics and money and wealth, there's no stopping it.
There's a question. Let me just say this question, my time will come. I don't have time to go write it quickly. I just want to make sure it gets out there. In my study of human history, world history over the years, and trying to understand what we're facing in terms of our greatest challenges, I actually did form a question, a big question. This is like the biggest question you could ever ask. It's really high level thinking, but I'm going to give it to you right now to think about, because I think all of you will understand this. Do we know how to use our power equitably and sustainably? I want you to think about this for a moment, because most of us as individuals do not think we have much power. Collectively, humankind has immense power now over the natural world and over each other too. Do we know how to use our power equitably and sustainably? Okay, and I'll let you don't have to answer it, but I just want you to think about it. And does that resonate a little bit with you, Ryan? Great, because the other, I'll let Maite finish and then go ahead, and then David, we'll come to you, and we're going to.
Okay, just what you just said.
Yeah.
I just want you guys to remember that the very beginning of our course, that's what I told you. We have limited time and we're destroying the planet. But now that you are asking about this situation, are we really responsible? Are we really ready to fight against this technology? I think everybody here is thinking only machine guns and bombs and missiles and the technology and the computers and the laptops and the information and the media, and you think that is it?
Keep going. Yeah.
People, I mean, how many of you buy everyday coffee in a disposable cup? How many times a day do you get a drink like that? And then you drink it and toast it. That is just think that an hydrogen bomb is gonna kill us. No, it's every one of each of us that take one thing, do things like this every day systematically. Every day, every moment. When I came here, because I'm international student, the first thing that shocked me was to see how much waste Canada produces. And I'm not talking about the whole country, I'm talking about Durham College. I was like, whoa, I cannot believe this. Yes, and the most economical resources people have, the most they waste. I have seen garages full of crap. Every time I go to Costco, I see the how do you call the little car that people pushes? Filled with garbage. You don't need
This is what Tolstoy.
Yes, that's what is going to kill us.
Need a lot of things.
That is what is going to kill us. It's not a hydrogen bomb. It's not a missile. It's your everyday choices that you purchase when you don't need it and you just contaminate. You think you go green because you have trash day and you have the green beans and the blue beans and the wastable beans. Please, of course not. You are very consuming country people. You know who doesn't do that? Third world countries, because they don't have money. Because before you get rid of a shirt, it goes from shirts to go around in, to go to the movies, to go to the theater, to go to the restaurant. And then you take the shirt to be at your house. And then that becomes a pajama. And then that becomes the dog's shirt. And then that becomes the rag to
Universal.
clean
Sure.
until it's completely destroyed.
Okay, hold on. I need you to just stop because I want to make sure David has a chance and anybody else. We're coming to the end, and I'm going to stay with this thought for now. In the First World War, I'm not going to go into the weapons of mass destruction yet. I want to finish with this because this is the critical thing about the 20th century that is so important. It's the Promethean dilemma of we start to know more, we start to create more, we start to do more, and we want more. We want more and more. What do we do then? David, go ahead. Oh, microphone. So Yasmin and yeah, I can hear you. Yeah. Go
So
ahead.
I just wanted to summarize what Maite said on something different and your question. Like, I like your question, but I think that the main problem is that we are not conscious of our own power, of our own individual power. We're
Well, I
not.
think we're conscious of our individual power not being enough, but as our collective power, I don't think we're conscious of, David. I don't think we really understand just what the impact of humanity is collectively, this thing called civilization, on the natural world and on each other. But go ahead,
like,
finish your thought. Okay.
I have the opposite view. Like, we're not conscious of our individual power. When you go to the to Tim Hortons, someone will buy a cup of tea, maybe the cold one, so it's a plastic cup of tea, a disposable one.
Yes.
So that person is not conscious about the impact that that cup of tea
Right.
had on. Let's
Sure. Yeah.
finish.
Fair point. No, absolutely
So-
right. Go ahead.
It's not conscious, and
Yeah.
even if that person was conscious about it, it's mainly because in the media, the mainstream platforms, other people started talking about that cup of tea, not because that person had a process of reflection where they concluded that they had an impact. I think that we are just like a bunch of lambs going to the slaughterhouse. That's
Well, I'm always going to say to that, yes, but I have immense faith in humans being able to solve problems when they admit there's a problem. I want to come back. I'm going to give you an example. Let me give you an example. This is inspiring, and I want to end here. Did I tell you about the ozone layer story? In the 1970s and 1980s, the environmental crisis was we humans have blown a hole in the ozone layer that protects the world from the sun's radiation. There's a hole there now, and it's coming from our aerosols, it's coming from our air conditioners, it's coming from chemicals that we're putting up into. It's similar to fossil fuels. It's the early version of climate change. We weren't talking climate change then. We weren't talking about, the greenhouse effect or global warming. We were talking about the ozone layer. And the hole is getting bigger, and it means that we're going to fry down here. Look at what we're doing. We're destroying the ozone layer. Well, guess what? The hole has largely been fixed. There is no more hole in the ozone layer. And do you know why that happened? No, you check. It's much less now.
How much do you think
Montreal Protocol. Montreal Protocol. And if you can believe this, check, you will see in the record, of all people, the British Prime Minister, Margaret Thatcher, and the American President, Ronald Reagan, both conservatives, both detested for their insensitivity and their lack of commitment to any kind of natural, environmental, thing. It turned out, this is the irony of history, Margaret Thatcher loved science. She was trained before she became the prime minister in science. So she had respect for science. So when scientists were saying, look at what's happening to the ozone layer, she listened to them. Today, what do we get? We get a lot of people yapping away on social media, all sorts of people saying, science is just your opinion, it's garbage, it's no, there is a thing called science, and it's real, and it's about what happens in the natural world, and there are people who care. Ronald Reagan, it turned out, loved nature, because he loved horses. He would ride in, California. He had a long, life where he was working with horses. He even acted in movies where he was a kind of, guy on the horse. The two of them came together. Two leaders with many others, but the two leaders at that level cared. And then there was an actual conference in Montreal where there were certain protocols established, and there was agreement on what needed to be done. Control on the chlorofluorocarbons, the CFCs that would be put into the atmosphere. In other words, there was a solution, and there could be a solution today for so many things if we had some similar kind of dynamic. I'm not saying it's perfect, but I'm saying we started to solve something. And it
I
was
will say
surprising.
something.
Yes. We have not the same political will, but we have a lot of people who care. And
I just want to make a comment about that because we have a very funny meme back in Latin America that says when you go to visit Canada and you watch all the forests and the lakes and the mountains, it's different than when Canada visits you. And you can see the mines and how they destroy these Canadian mine complexes, destroy the
That's terrible.
geography.
The oil sands.
So they are, when you say, oh, these politicians that they care, they don't care. They care for their neighborhood, but not for the world.
I will always come back to figures like Rachel Carson. I will always come back to figures like Charles Darwin, Alfred Russel Wallace, and many others that I've touched upon who care about more than money. They exist, Maite. In fact, in all of us, I'm going to just say something maybe that's naive, but I believe, and I will never stop believing. I think in all of us, we all desire more than to be rich. Now, I'm just going to see for a moment. I'm just going to see for a moment, okay? Because a lot of these problems come down to wealth and acquisition and the desire to acquire so much for yourself. David, if you had to answer this question honestly, is there something that matters to you more than being rich? Oh, human scale. Oh, well, maybe it isn't. But nonetheless, Chantal, is there something more ticking or inside here of you, Chantal Gallant, than just wanting to be rich? Okay. Maite, I know the answer to this question. For
But
sure.
just one thing, we can have this discussion because we have already eaten. You can discuss this with everybody else in the South Hemisphere,
That's true,
and
'cause
the
we're-
answer is not going to be the same.
But okay, hold on. Don't assume that the people in Oshawa who live here in Whitby or wherever in this area,
No, Canada.
they
No,
are
Canada.
not living in squalor, or they're not living in great poverty, but some of them do. Some of them don't have any money, and some of them are dealing with a lot of mental. So yeah, some. But let me just see, money or more? Is there something more than being rich for you? Self-preservation. Okay. Gurujit, would you say that there's something more? You're here in Canada, you're learning all this not to become rich, but something else that's deeper than that, would you say? Or is it you want to have money, you want to be comfortable, and you want to acquire more? Is that important, or is there something else? Living in peace. Yeah, yeah, peace. Peace among the people you are with, or just peace in your own self? Peace in your community? Well, I'm going to end with one small thing of the little I know of Sikhism in the Punjab. There is a place, you can help me, in a place called Amritsar. The place called the Golden Temple. My understanding is that in the Golden Temple, 24/7, 365, there is food. Food. It doesn't matter who you are, where you come from. If you're hungry, you can go to that temple at any time and you will be given a meal. You can take the meal out. You can even sleep there a little bit. And all you need to do is just put something on your head, right? And to wash your hands. Is that correct? Well, I wonder if that somehow proves a point that in a part of the world, which is the second most populous nation on the planet, China has 1.5 billion, I think India has 1.3. In this great society, the Indian society, where in the Punjab, you have Sikhs, you have Hindus, you have Christians living together in spite of the fear that the Hindu leader today has said about Sikh independence. Actually, on the ground in the Punjab, it's not like that. It's totally a political game. So maybe it sort of demonstrates, Maite, that for human beings, there is something more, and it is deep in this great civilization that is 4,000. India is among our oldest
Okay.
civilizations.
Look at this.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay, and then we'll conclude.
I'm not in disagree with actions of kindness. I love actions of kindness. Okay. But when you say there's all these things that they are offering food, they are offering shelter, they are giving you a something to
Yes.
breathe. Okay. If we are honest and analytic, that's only putting water in a bucket with a hole, because it makes you feel better, okay? But you are not changing the system. So this will continue to the end of times. What you need to do is to change the system. And for that, you need to confront the government. That British government had a lot to do with Indian poverty, but it's easier to give them bread than to change the system.
Okay, let's conclude, okay? Because I want to make sure everybody has time. It's a Friday. Again, Yasmin, I'll make sure that I save these live chats. It'll be available for everybody in DC Connect. I just, again, want to thank all of you for coming in person, having the discussions, and particularly for Maite, who comes always ready to really engage. And in these conversations, I hope there's a lot of learning that's happening for all of you. And I think it's a wonderful forum to learn in. And for those of you watching the recordings, this is exactly how I think a classroom should be. We learn from each other. I'm your professor, I can guide you, but we ultimately learn from each other. This is a very human thing. Persistent collective learning is what William McNeill said humans can do better than anybody. we learn together very well. Okay? Especially now more, Chantel, you got it. Especially now more than ever, we need it. We must listen to each other. We must learn from each other. Have a great week, everybody, and you know where to reach me. Okay? I'll see you next week. So let me make sure I get this. Thank you, David. I want to save the live chat before I do too many things here. Where's my cursor? Somewhere. Cursor, come back. Where are you? Okay. There you are, cursor. I want now Toria. Toria is over here. And I want to end this. Don't I stop the live stream?